The cameras are flashing. The crowd at Craven Cottage is just completely frozen in suspense. It's May 9, 2026. And this 19-year-old Brazilian sensation, Rayan, he strikes a ball from 20 yards out. It stays low, it's hit incredibly hard, and it just completely deceives the goalkeeper before nestling into the bottom corner.
Oh, it's the kind of cinematic moment that completely shifts the gravity of an entire season. You can almost feel that collective intake of breath from the traveling supporters.
Yeah, totally. But to really grasp what this moment actually means, you have to look beyond just that one pitch, because this isn't a regular late-season fixture. This is the absolute climax of a miraculous, frankly, logic-defying campaign for AFC Bournemouth.
Right, it really is.
And hanging in the balance, waiting in the wings, is this massive, unprecedented twist that could rewrite the entire landscape of European football.
Yeah.
So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are looking at the headline, Champions League Twist, What No One Expected.
Which is, quite the title.
It is. And our mission today for you listening is to basically synthesize this massive stack of sources. We're pulling from match reports, deep tactical analyses from platforms like Dream Data Ball, and the really complex UEFA betting permutations that William Hill mapped out.
Oh, the math on those is wild.
It's crazy. We're going to examine Bournemouth's tactical evolution, the mechanics of their rise, and the mathematical domino effect that could unexpectedly parachute a club from the south coast of England straight into Europe's ultimate elite competition.
It is just a phenomenal case study, because if we connect this to the broader realities of modern football, what we're witnessing here isn't just, a purple patch of form.
Right, a lucky streak or whatever.
Exactly. It's a fundamental disruption of the traditional Premier League hierarchy. And they achieved it through, high variance tactical bravery and a very deliberate front office strategy.
Yeah, and to really appreciate the magnitude of that disruption, we need to anchor ourselves in where Bournemouth actually was just a couple of seasons ago. Because back on match day 9 of the 2023-24 season, Bournemouth was sitting in 19th place.
Oof. Yeah.
I mean, they were deep in the relegation zone with 0 wins. Fast forward to today, May 2026, and they are riding a 16-game unbeaten streak, which is the longest current unbeaten run in Europe's top 5 leagues.
It's a staggering turnaround. I mean, the traditional narrative here would usually point to, a gritty defensive manager coming in to just steady the ship.
Right, just park the bus and survive.
Yeah, but the reality is far more compelling. It comes down to the economic realities of the Premier League. Mid-table clubs simply cannot outspend the established elite. They just can't. So to bridge that financial gap, they have to adopt high-variance, high-risk tactical systems. And manager Andoni Iraola, he imported this incredibly bold, proactive system from his time at Rayo Vallecano.
And when they were winless, the media pressure to abandon that system was immense. Like, I remember reading those early tactical critiques. The consensus was basically that playing a heavy metal, high-pressing game while sitting in 19th place was tactical suicide.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone was calling for his head.
But the club held their nerve. And looking at the data now, you can see exactly why. According to Dream Data Ball, Bournemouth has evolved into an elite pressing machine. They are actually second only to Spurs across Europe's top 5 leagues for winning the ball back in the final third.
Precisely. Because their wingers operate very narrowly to deliberately bait the opposition into funneling passes into wide, seemingly safe areas. And the moment the ball travels out wide...
They pounce.
Exactly. Bournemouth triggers this aggressive, coordinated trap. They lock the opposition in, win the ball high up the pitch, and immediately launch vertical transitions before the defensive block can even reset.
Wow. But reviewing the tactical football analysis reports on how they build out from the back, I still see a massive element of risk. I mean, they regularly have their central midfielders completely abandoning their traditional zones to drop deep and act as makeshift center backs.
They do, yeah.
It sounds like a chess grandmaster deliberately sacrificing their back row. Like, is the defensive vulnerability really worth the progression they get?
It actually is. And, this highlights a major structural shift across the league right now. You can look at a similar dynamic build-up model being utilized at Brighton to understand the mechanics.
Okay, how so?
So when you use your goalkeeper, like Bart Verbruggen at Brighton, for example, as an active pivot player high outside his box, you create an artificial numerical advantage. You suddenly have a +1 in the build-up.
Oh, right, because the opposition forwards generally aren't instructed to aggressively press the goalkeeper.
Exactly. So with the goalkeeper comfortable in possession, the actual center back split incredibly wide, which stretches the first line of the opposition's press. Now, yes, this leaves a gaping hole centrally.
Which sounds terrifying.
It does. But that space is deliberately occupied by the central midfielders dropping in. And you do this because midfielders naturally possess the highest technical proficiency for receiving the ball under extreme pressure on the half turn.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, by placing your most press-resistant players in the most high-pressure zones, you bait the opposition into committing bodies forward. Once the pressing team jumps, they leave massive transitional space behind them. So it's not really a defensive sacrifice, it's a highly engineered trap to exploit blind sides.
You're essentially weaponizing the opposition's desire to win the ball. That's brilliant, and it clearly works. But the tactical system is only really half the story here. The squad evolution is equally fascinating, because in the span of a few windows, they lost their primary focal point, Dominic Solanke, to Tottenham.
Right, massive loss.
And then, in January 2026, they sold Antoine Semenyo to Manchester City for a club record £64 million. Yeah. Historically, when a mid-table club loses its two most productive attackers, regression is inevitable.
Regression is the expectation, certainly.
Yeah.
But they replaced individual attacking brilliance with systemic fluidity. Justin Kluivert was repurposed as this roaming number 10, dropping into the half spaces to link that midfield buildup we just discussed with the final third.
Yeah, he's been fantastic there.
And then you have Milos Kerkez providing incredible asymmetrical width from the fullback position, and Evan Elson just taking over the central striking role.
Which brings up a really interesting point in the data, actually. If you look at the underlying metrics on Dream Data Ball, based on expected points, or XPTS, Bournemouth shouldn't just be in 6th place. They should actually be 3rd in the Premier League.
Wow, 3rd.
Yeah, 3rd. However, they've underperformed their expected goals by a massive 8 goals this season. So I'm curious how you read that deficit. Is Evan Elson just, struggling to adapt his finishing to the sheer speed of the Premier League? Or is Iraola's aggressive, physically demanding system leaving these attackers too fatigued to be clinical when they finally get into the box?
That is the critical tension in Iraola's system, honestly. When you demand your forwards initiate a high-intensity press for 80 minutes, their physical capacity to execute intricate, composed finishes in the penalty area naturally diminishes.
That makes total sense. Their legs must be heavy.
Exactly. The cognitive load and the lactic acid buildup make that final touch far less reliable. So while the system generates a massive volume of high-quality chances, hence the high XG, the physical toll of the system itself slightly depresses the actual conversion rate.
Which perfectly segues into the physical demands of this squad and why they inherently rely on youth so heavily. Because to run a system that demanding, you need boundless stamina. And that brings us to the chaos at Craven Cottage on May 9th.
Oh, what a match that was.
Unbelievable. Going into this match against Fulham, Bournemouth knows a win solidifies their hold on 6th place. But it quickly devolved into this bizarre game state anomaly.
It really did, because the first 40 minutes were incredibly cagey. Neither team wanted to overcommit and leave transitional space, but in the 41st minute, the entire structural dynamic of the match just fractured.
Yeah, the red card.
Right. Ryan Christie commits to a challenge on Timothy Castagna. The referee initially pulls a yellow, but the VAR review clearly shows Christie's studs landing high on Castagna's ankle. It's a reckless, dangerous challenge, resulting in a straight red card.
So Bournemouth is down to 10 men right before halftime, away from home, with European qualification on the line. The immediate assumption is that they will, drop into a low block, abandon the high press, and just try to survive the 90 minutes.
Just weather the storm.
Right. And Fulham just has to methodically circulate the ball and exploit the man advantage.
But football rarely adheres to logical scripts, right? Especially in high-pressure situations. Deep into first-half stoppage time, Fulham's Joachim Andersen commits an almost identical, reckless, two-footed lunge on Adrian Truffert. Another VAR review. Another straight red card.
Absolute madness. So suddenly we're looking at a 10 versus 10 match. And I want to unpack the spatial dynamics of that, because removing one outfield player from each team doesn't just mean equal footing. It fundamentally changes the geography of the pitch, right? You now have 20% less outfield coverage clogging the central areas.
That is exactly the point. When a game goes 10v10, the pitch effectively becomes much larger. The distance between the defensive lines increases.
Which changes everything.
Totally. For a team like Fulham that prefers structured possession, it's a nightmare because there are fewer passing triangles available. But for a team like Bournemouth, whose entire tactical identity is built on vertical transitions and exploiting space behind the defensive line, a 10v10 scenario is highly advantageous. It creates isolated one-on-one matchups across the pitch.
Which explains how the second half completely opened up. Bournemouth's Eli Jr. Kroupi rattles the crossbar. And then in the 53rd minute, we get that cinematic moment. 19-year-old Brazilian prospect Rayan, signed in January from Vasco da Gama, exploits that extra space, drives the ball from 20 yards out, and beats Bern Leno to make it 1-0.
And while Bournemouth survived a massive late scare when former Bournemouth player Josh King hit the crossbar for Fulham with basically the final kick of the game, that goal from Rayan secured the victory.
The massive victory.
Huge. But what's truly significant here isn't just the 3 points, it's the demographic profile of the goal scorer.
Right, because Rayan scoring the winner isn't an isolated incident. I was looking at the historical context here. The BBC noted that Rayan's strike was the 56th goal or assist provided by a teenager in the Premier League this season. That is the highest volume the league has seen since the 2006-07 season.
Wow.
But the standout metric is that Bournemouth alone is responsible for 17 of those teenage goals.
It is an incredible concentration of youth production. I mean, historically, you have to look back to the famous Liverpool teams of the 1990s, the squads featuring Robbie Fowler and Michael Owen, to find a single club relying this heavily on teenagers for offensive output.
Which forces us to look at the strategy behind those numbers. Are we watching a deliberate, data-driven Moneyball approach here? Because it seems like Bournemouth has realized they can't buy prime, established 25-year-old stars. So they're using data scouting to corner the market on undervalued assets, like Rayan, before the major European clubs can swoop in.
That is precisely the front office model. You identify high-ceiling talent in secondary markets, you bring them into a tactical system that actively rewards aggression and physical stamina, and you accept the inherent volatility of youth. The strategy isn't just to win matches, it's to develop assets.
But I do have to question the long-term sustainability of that model. I mean, relying on teenagers to score 17 goals in the most physically demanding league in the world, is that a replicable, sustainable strategy year over year, or is this just lightning in a bottle? Because teenagers are inherently inconsistent.
It's a highly volatile strategy, for sure. You are banking on rapid athletic development without the guarantee of tactical maturity. But again, for a club with Bournemouth's resources, volatility is the point. You embrace the inconsistency because the upside is European qualification and massive asset appreciation.
And speaking of European qualification, if you're listening and you find these deep tactical and strategic breakdowns as fascinating as we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're constantly digging into the hidden mechanics of modern sports, and you really won't want to miss our next deep dive.
Especially because the mechanics of Bournemouth European qualification involve a rulebook anomaly that is genuinely unprecedented.
Yes. Let's dive into the UEFA permutations, because this is where the math gets incredibly complex. I was mapping out the UEFA rulebook scenarios provided by William Hill. Securing 6th place normally guarantees a spot in the Europa League, which is a fantastic achievement.
Oh, absolutely.
But there is a scenario right now where Bournemouth could bypass the Europa League entirely and walk straight into the Champions League.
And to understand how, we have to look at the UEFA coefficient rankings. Because English clubs performed so efficiently in European competitions this year, the Premier League was awarded an extra European performance spot, or an EPS.
Meaning the baseline qualification for the Champions League extended from the top 4 teams to the top 5.
Exactly. Now, sitting in that 5th place spot currently is Aston Villa. But Aston Villa is also navigating their own European campaign. They have reached the final of the UEFA Europa League, where they are scheduled to play the German side SC Freiburg in Istanbul.
Right. And here is where the rules create a massive loophole. Because if Aston Villa wins that Europa League final, UEFA regulations stipulate that the winner automatically qualifies for next season's Champions League as a title holder.
Which creates a fascinating administrative vacuum. Because Villa would enter the Champions League via the title holder allocation, the qualification spot attached to their 5th place finish in the Premier League, that extra EPS spot, doesn't simply vanish. It gets passed down the domestic table.
Wait, so it's basically a line-shifting mechanism.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, imagine you are standing 6th in line outside a VIP club, and the bouncer says they're only letting 5 people in, but suddenly the guy standing in 5th place get pulled into a private VIP party by the owner. He vacates his spot, the line shifts forward, and you walk right through the front door.
That is the exact mechanism. If Villa lifts the trophy in Istanbul and finishes 5th, the Premier League effectively sends 6 teams to the Champions League. And Bournemouth, entirely by virtue of finishing 6th, inherits that windfall.
But they haven't mathematically secured that 6th place spot yet, which just adds to the tension. Looking at the weekend surrounding fixtures, Brighton is lurking right behind them.
Very much so. On the same afternoon Bournemouth survived the chaos at Fulham, Brighton systematically dismantled Wolverhampton Wanderers in a 3-0 victory.
And their tactical execution in that match was just
It
ruthless.
was clinical. Jack Hinshelwood scored in the first minute, and Captain Lewis Dunk doubled the lead by the 5th minute. They suffocated the game immediately, and Yankuba Minta added a late third. That result keeps Brighton just 2 points behind Bournemouth with 2 matches remaining.
So any slip-up by Bournemouth, say a draw against Manchester City next week, and Brighton could easily jump them for 6th place and steal that potential Champions League lottery ticket. Oh, and as a quick aside, looking at the data from that Brighton match, it finalized a historically grim milestone for Wolves.
Oh, yes. That loss meant Wolverhampton became only the 2nd team in the history of the competition to lose against every single other team in a single Premier League campaign. Yeah, a devastating statistical reality for their supporters.
Truly brutal. But pulling back to the macro view of this UEFA permutation, it really highlights how deeply interconnected the financial realities of modern sports have become. We are just talking about prestige here.
No, not at all. We were talking about institutional transformation. The financial delta between the Europa League and the Champions League is staggering. You are talking about tens of millions of pounds in broadcasting revenue, higher matchday yields, and an entirely different caliber of player you can attract in the transfer market.
It changes everything.
A single goal in a stadium in Turkey between an English and a German team could completely rewrite the financial trajectory and future squad architecture of a club on the south coast of England.
It is an interconnected financial domino effect.
Mm.
Like, everything is leveraged against everything else. It's what makes analyzing this level of the sport so endlessly compelling. And as this season reaches its climax, these intersecting storylines are only going to become more volatile. So again, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what we uncover next.
The tactical and financial layers are fascinating, but the human element is what anchors this entire story for me.
Absolutely. And that is exactly what I want to leave everyone listening with today. Because we've mapped out the tactical evolution, we've debated the sustainability of the youth movement, and we've unpacked the UEFA math. But consider the bitter irony of Andoni Iraola's reality right now.
Oh, it's heartbreaking in a way.
It really is. Here is a manager who walked into the fire, who endured the intense scrutiny of a winless streak when everyone demanded he compromise his philosophy. He didn't blink. He built a high-pressing tactical machine. He weaponized a squad of teenagers. He engineered a 16-game unbeaten run to push Bournemouth to the precipice of an impossible Champions League dream. And yet, right as the final whistle blows, right as the Champions League anthem is queuing up, he is walking out the door at the end of the summer.
He has meticulously engineered a high-performance vehicle, knowing full well he will never get to drive it on the biggest stage.
It is a profound professional sacrifice. So as you watch these final matches play out, the question that lingers isn't just whether Bournemouth will hold on to 6th place or whether Aston Villa will do them a massive favor in Istanbul. The real question is, who inherits this volatile, teenage-led powerhouse next season? And what will they possibly do to maintain the masterpiece that Iraola is leaving behind?
It's the ultimate transitional challenge for a front office. Like, how do you replace the architect without collapsing the entire structure?
We will definitely be watching to see how they try.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love unpacking these complex tactical layers and hidden narratives with you. Until next time, keep your eyes on the pitch and maybe keep a calculator handy for that UEFA rulebook. Take care.